Ganesh, thanks for making time to sit down and talk with me this afternoon. You just are straight off the podium on talking about the opportunities and threats in the biotech industry. So why don't you give me a little bit of a summary about what you talked about?
So basically what I covered was that economic growth, which is actually a very important thing because there are lots of people on the planet who just don't have the economic advantage that the developed nations have. So the developing economies are bringing their per capita income and middle class to a stage where they're more sustainable. So we are talking about growing $1,000 per capita income on an annualized basis to about $4,000 per capita, and this is going to occur between now and 2030. When you really think about it, that's 15 years, and 1.8 billion people is actually the number of middle class people today. That number is going to grow exponentially to about 5 billion middle class people by 2030. The consumption of that middle class is about $35 trillion more than we are consuming today. And if you just look at 20% of that number, which is where most of the food and agriculture comes in, that's a $7 trillion number. That's about half the GDP of the United States. That's enormous opportunity. So agriculture and the ecosystem of agriculture has enormous opportunity, both in terms of meeting the food needs, especially protein and caloric needs, as well as the convenience and so forth, the texture, the taste that they differ, which differ, and the desire. Those are more expensive. So there is significant opportunity in that regard. But if we were to simply scale up agriculture from what we have today towards that point, unfortunately, we will basically destroy planet Earth as we know it today, and it won't be good for anybody.
Well, they say that we need something like 9 planets if everybody lived the same way that North Americans do. Right. So what are some of the things that we can do to be more efficient and sustainable?
So obviously, of course, investments in research is one area because that's the source. Many of the investments in natural sciences, they will have applications in agriculture. That certainly is an arena. But even more importantly than that is the notion that there should be a drive to the market, that it should be possible to take the products that you develop in the lab and deploy it as long as they meet the certain safety needs that people have established. That notion has to evolve. It is simply unacceptable today that we have the best of the technologies in maize fields in United States and Canada, but that is not even in South America or certainly not in Asia at this point of time. Whereas if you were to develop an iPhone 6, the day it is sold in New York, or maybe even the day before it is sold in New York, it's already available in Shanghai. So that notion that technology is not that portable, that readily movable from region to region, so that you can actually make sure that farmers in these developing regions, they can avail themselves of the best of the technologies, produce more with less input. And that input, one of those inputs is labor. It doesn't matter whether you're dealing with developed economies or developing economies. Even a farmer in Chennai, in India, he or she does not want to plant the rice seedling. So if you have a machine which plants the rice seedling at that point of time, that's enormous contribution. So certainly, of course, innovation in terms of not just biology, but innovation in terms of robotics and automation, and then the deployment of that technology in a real-time basis. Now, those are some of the key building blocks. And I also alluded to where nature has done a good job, but nature hasn't done the best job. And here we can tweak nature. For example, we only harvest about 1% of the sunlight today and convert that into useful energy, chemical energy. If we can change it from 1% to 1.5%, that is enormous improvement in terms of productivity. So we should be working on problems of that nature, the Manhattan-like project.
So something like that, how do we capture more sunlight? Is it greenhouses, or what are you referring to?
Actually, we change the antenna in the plant through biology.
Okay.
And, there are a number of interesting biochemical breakthroughs, biotechnology breakthroughs that are needed. And we need to be stimulating our minds and the minds of our fellow researchers to work on problems of that nature.
On the side of policy and public perception, any comments there on how we can do better for the uptake of this technology?
I talked about this. We are very passionate in what we do, and we have spoken with passion. And we have also spoken with dispassion in terms of the science and the objectivity. But what is missing in our communication is the compassion, the emotional side of this, the lack of leveraging of the social media, and appealing to the people that this is actually about organic agriculture practiced with modern technologies. That notion hasn't seeped into the minds and souls of people on a global basis. And it's absolutely important that we do that. It is not sufficient for a bunch of gray-haired people to sit in rooms like this and talk about it, but we need to be out there in action. And we ourselves need to learn how to participate in social media. And I think the training that we impart on people, on students, that actually needs a wholesale change. You know, the technologies that we have for education today are basically extensions of 1950s technology. We are training professors to be, students to be professors. Professors are training students to be professors. That's not an acceptable modus operandi in future. We need people who are much more entrepreneurial and much more communicative, much more savvy with the leveraging of information. So we need to change our education in a major way as well.
I think we just need to be more willing to have those conversations. Something that I try to do when I travel is to see if people have any feelings one way or the other, and just have a gentle conversation with them. I think we need to be open to those opportunities more.
Absolutely. And so the science, investments in science and the training of scientists, those are certainly important. Those are the foundations. But if that's all we do, it is necessary but insufficient to meet the needs that we have from a planetary perspective. So
communication is the next step then?
Communication, yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for chatting with me today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
To bring our 4 days